A Simplex converted to a Great Western Railway Prairie tank, part 13, machining the rear smokebox ring. After machining the front smokebox ring, I still have the jaws fitted into the chuck that grip the part like this, from the outside because my chuck isn't big enough to hold this internally. As with the front smokebox ring, the casting is a bit rough. This is very normal. There's still some metal attached to it where it was poured, and because of this I cannot get the ring to run concentrically. I could refit the other jaws back into the chuck and then hold the part internally, but this isn't a good idea and I will explain why later on in the video. All I had to do was tidy up the edge of this ring, and now it's concentric enough to be machined. I always have a soft hammer in the vicinity of the lathe, and this is quite useful for tapping components to make sure that they are fitted into the chuck hard up against the jaws. I'm using the boring tool once again for the first part of the operation. I'm using this to clean up the inner face of the ring. Later on in the video you will see me holding this ring in the chuck by this part. You don't really have to do this because the smokebox ring is right at the back of the smokebox and the inner diameter is relatively unimportant. But I always like to machine this part so it looks good. In this clip I'm facing across the front. First of all, taking rough cuts and a final fine cut. This is most unusual. There are blowholes in this one as well. It's very common to get blowholes in castings. It's unimportant in this application. Blowholes in any cast component are a problem. Any part that is really visible would need replacing, and in certain circumstances the blown area would be very weak. But in the case of a gunmetal inner smokebox ring, this is relatively unimportant. And now it's top tip time. This is a good one. When you clamp these smokebox rings in the chuck, you cannot apply a lot of pressure to them, otherwise they will bend and they'll go out of round. The rings are most securely held when you're using the outside jaws, which apply the pressure to the outside of the ring. In this clip though, I've changed the chuck jaws for the ones that are fitted 90% of the time. And now this gunmetal smokebox ring has been held in place by the outside edges of the inside jaws. And this works fine, but there's just one obvious thing you have to think about. What happens when you machine metal? Yes, it gets smaller, but it also gets a good bit hotter. I've already mentioned that when you mount these rings in the chuck, you can't put a lot of pressure on anyway, otherwise they will go out of round. So now there's a bit of a problem. As the gunmetal part warms up, it expands, so it gets bigger and is very likely to fall off the chuck jaws when it's been held by the chuck in this way. This is only a problem when using inside jaws, because when you use the outside jaws the part is firmly clamped, and as it gets hot it expands, and the hotter it gets the more firmly it's held, but not so when you're using inside jaws. To some people this will seem obvious, to others less, but I thought I would include it as a top tip. In this instance there is quite a lot of machining to carry out on this rear smokebox ring, so it is going to get hot. At the moment I'm checking the machining progress with my digital caliper. The diameter of this rebate or lip on the rear smokebox ring is not that critical. It does not want to be an interference fit. Once this ring is riveted to the smokebox, the entire smokebox should be a nice sliding fit in the end of the boiler. You must not, and I repeat, you must not make this a fit in the end of the boiler where you have to hammer the smokebox into position. When I fit smokeboxes to boilers, I use some kind of sealant, usually something like Boss White, the old plumber's stuff. I try and avoid where possible using silicone rubber. The point I'm trying to make is that if you're going to use a sealant, you need a gap between the components for it to do its job. But the main reason for making this not an interference fit is you do not want to stress out the boiler shell in this area. I had to remove quite a lot of metal from the inner part of this rear smokebox ring. And now it's time to remove it from the chuck and see whether it fits okay. And as you can see, it fits very well. I can easily remove the rear ring from the boiler shell using very little hand pressure. To finish the job I need to put this back in the chuck and machine the outer diameter. And here I'm applying the measure twice and cut once principle, because this part of the rear ring needs to be a tight fit in the smokebox. it will eventually be riveted in place, but if you do accidentally turn down the outer diameter to be slightly too small, you can use some Loctite 603. Here I'm fitting the rear ring into the smoke box. I'm not using Loctite 603. As you can see in this clip, it's quite a good fit, and I'm tapping it into place using a soft hammer. If you don't have a soft hammer, you can use a standard hammer, but with a piece of wood between the hammer and the ring. Time now to see if it fits in the boiler, just to make sure that hammering it into the smoke box hasn't distorted it, and no, it's fine. With the ring firmly attached to the smoke box, it's a great fit in the boiler. I thought that now would be a good time to mark the position for the chimney. I measured 2 inches from the end and scribed a line, then I sat the chimney on the line, looked down the chimney at the line, and used a felt tip pen to make a lot of marks, so now I definitely know where the chimney is going to go. The next job is to have a look at the smoke box door. This is the original smoke box and smoke box door from the boiler that was bought from the steam workshop. Currently I'm removing it and its fittings from the smoke box. In this clip I'm tapping the front ring into place, as you can see one more time with the soft hammer. Once again, as you can see, it's a good fit in the smoke box, but it's not too tight. I could hammer it back out again. In fact, I probably will when I show how to use silver solder to repair blowholes. In a similar manner to the original smoke box, I need to leave the rounded part of the smoke box ring just proud of the smoke box itself. This clip shows me looking at the smoke box door hinges, which are not too good really. The first thing to do is to straighten them on the bench with a hammer, and then make some new fittings for the smoke box to match exactly the position of the hinges. This job is going to be quite fiddly. More about that in another episode. Here you can see the smoke box fitted to the boiler and it's starting to look good. I need to do quite a lot of riveting. I'll show this shortly in a future episode. But that's it for this one. I'd just like to say, stay safe and well, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.